And for more now on how that ruling will impact the business community, James Klein joins us. He is president of the American Benefits Council. Welcome, Mr. Klein. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
We heard a little bit in Hampton's report of some of the broader issues facing American businesses as a result of this decision. But tell me what you think the biggest impact will be.
Well, we praised the court's decision. We had actually filed a friend of the court brief. I think we were the only national business organization to join that friend of the court brief, asking the court to strike down Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act because it put employers in the position of having to treat some of their legally married employees differently than other of their legally married employees in those states that recognize same-sex marriage. It also created various administrative burdens on the employer.
What will the biggest effect of the striking down of DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, be for American companies? I understand what it's going to do for federal benefits and taxes and so forth, but how would companies be affected by this?
Well, for example, companies have to have different payroll functions and administrative matters in the same state to treat some of their legally married employees differently than others. That problem is not, by the way, totally done away with now because, of course, the situation remains essentially the same in those 38 other states that don't recognize same-sex marriage. There are a number of administrative challenges now facing employers as a result of this change, even though the vast majority of the very large employers who we represent were very much in favor, obviously, of our asking the court to strike down the Defense of Marriage Act. But there are issues related to making changes in employee benefit plans now. Do they have to go back and ask for spousal consent in various instances where that's a requirement? To what extent will any of this be retroactive? Do both employers and employees have the right to ask the IRS to refund the payroll taxes, and in the case of the employees, the income taxes that were paid on employer-provided health care coverage that until today did not enjoy the same tax-free treatment accorded to opposite-sex couples?
So obviously it's very complicated, but if I'm hearing you correctly, the result of this decision will make it easier for most American companies to be in compliance with the law, which then would make them less likely to be open to lawsuits by employees that perhaps under DOMA might have felt as though they were being treated unfairly.
No, I mean, employers were in compliance with the law as it stood prior to today. The issue was that it created some inconsistencies and inequities for some of their employees, and employers didn't like that. They sponsor benefit plans in order to serve their employees and their employee family members, and DOMA in many respects impeded that ability.
In those states, I believe there are 13 that recognize same-sex marriage. What has the experience been of companies with respect to their benefit costs when those laws went into effect? Did their benefit costs increase, and if so, by how much? Do you know?
They didn't really increase amongst the employers who we represent, who already are providing this coverage. Obviously that was a voluntary decision on the part of the employers. Now, arguably, employers in those states that recognize same-sex marriage would be required to provide the same degree of benefits. But most of our member companies already were doing that. So it's not so much that when the states recognize same-sex marriage that it increased their costs, other than some of those administrative costs that I mentioned earlier, whereby there had to be these separate payroll functions and things of that nature.
All right, Mr. Klein, thank you very much for trying to clarify a complicated situation. James Klein.